So, hey guys.
Hey.
You already know who I am, but my name is Emily. So I'm going to talk about the history of the automobile and basically talk about the past, the present, and the future, how it all kind of came together. So we know that the automobile's kind of traveled a long way from where it really started, but where it's going to end up, we don't really know where. So what was the automobile like then, and how much could it possibly change? Is kind of what I'm going to go over. We know that transportation is changing every single year. Makes and models of cars are changing every single year, whether it's features, body styles, everything. I decided to choose this topic just because, I own 4 cars. And I work at a car dealership, and I love cars, and hopefully one day to use my degree to work with cars. So, how it began. So, where the automobile is now and where the automobile could be in the future. I'm going to start with where how the automobile began. Start in the past. So, the automobile was invented in the late 1800s. It was perfected in Germany and France. The very first automobile was credited to the French inventor Nicolas Joseph Cugnot. It started out as a steam-propelled automobile, which is interesting. It only had 3 wheels, and it was essentially an artillery wagon. So it wasn't quite like a automobile. Not something that you would think of driving, but you can kind of see in the image there that that's what it would look like. So at the time, that's the 3-wheeled artillery wagon. Only the top speed of that was only 2 miles an hour, and actually while they were testing it, it actually crashed. So that was kind of the end of that. After Cugnot's kind of Hall of Fame moment for, bringing that into, the works here, Carl Benz is actually credited as like the father of the automobile. He's the one that created the very first gasoline or combustion engine for the car, I guess, if you want to say that. And it looked a lot different than what Cugnot's looked like. So you can kind of see in that image there that that's what his looked like. So by the early 1900s, a number of companies started to be coming out for production. Henry Ford actually made his debut around that time. He made the automobile, actually, he was the first one to make the automobile available to the public. So Ford was the very first one to put it out into production, put it into assembly line, and allow people like you and I to drive them, which is pretty cool. So he created one of the world's very first massive assembly lines. Assembly lines, he wasn't the very first one. It wasn't, one that he came up with. It's just something that, it's been mass produced now that we use to actually mass produce automobiles and other goods. So that's pretty cool. So the assembly line was actually in full effect by the 1920s and has been ever since, like I said. By 1927 is when Henry Ford ended up stopping production on the Model T, his own car. Now, he made the same car. He didn't really change it much within the 7 years that he made it, from 1920 to 1927. And he ended up selling about 17 million of them, which is crazy. Yeah. Because of the automobile, actually eventually started to kill off railroads. We know that most of them are gone. We still use some of them today. But yeah, it did end up killing off railroads. And then it did change the landscape of basically everything. because of automobiles, we had to add roads and highways and parking lots, things like that. You couldn't step out your door today without seeing a street. You can't walk out of work without seeing a street or even seeing a car. So, and then by 1920, there were the big three, the major three automobile makers, and that was Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. And they were all located in Detroit at the time, and I think they still are today. So not only did the U.S. have their big three automakers, but so did Japan and Germany. Japan ended up rolling out Toyota, Nissan, and Honda. And then in Germany, they rolled out with Audi, Mercedes, and BMW. Now, with Germany, you could also claim that Volkswagen was a big one for them too. But being Audi and Volkswagen go hand in hand together, decided to just say Audi. So because there were so many automakers that started to come out and produce vehicles, it allowed for the automobile to evolve. Everybody started doing their own thing, started, having their own features, making their own different types of 4x4 vehicles or different types of engines. I know some of us know that there's different types of engines like rotary motors and things like that. So that Mazda kind of came out with. But anyways, that's kind of the gist. So now that I've kind of talked about how the automobile came to be, I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit of how that has kind of transformed into what it is today. So the automobile, after the creation of the first automobile, body styles have definitely changed. They've been changing every year. There's, unlike what, the Model T first was, there was just one Model T, and that was the same every year for the last 7 years until it ended up going out of production. What's cool now is that we have so many different makes and models, and every year those makes and models change. So, unlike the very first automobile created by Cugnot, most automobiles have 4 wheels now instead of 3. Now there are some exceptions to that, being like motorcycles, obviously. Some may know about the slingshot, which is considered, it's a motor vehicle. It's also considered you have to have a motorcycle license to drive it, but it does have 3 wheels. One of the only vehicles these days that has 3. But other than that, some off-roading vehicles do, some ATVs or recreational vehicles. And then even the body style since the very first automobiles changed. So if you take a look at this image here, you can see that the very first one, not the very first one, but one of the very first ones is very long, it's heavy, there's unnecessary parts to it. These days we've kind of compacted things, made things a little bit more functional. Instead of putting tires on the sides and these massive wheel wells, things like that, we've compacted everything and put things where it would be easier to access them. And then also, because of that, most of our automobiles are fully enclosed with the exception of like convertibles. And again, like off-road vehicles, like Jeeps. So with that, many different styles have come out with automobiles, like trucks, hybrids, sedans, even semis. I mean, there's almost anything you can think of. And then each of them, have their own functionality. So unlike what it was back in the 1800s or the 1900s, where there was just one car or maybe 2 cars at the very beginning, you have everything has its own purpose, its own functionality, which is pretty cool. So when the automobile was first invented, its sole purpose was to get from point A to point B. You know, like I said before, today there's many different automobiles to get different things done. Trucks to haul, 4x4s to get you through the snow, or even off-roading, and sports cars just for that one purpose, just to go fast. So, and you can kind of see some different cars here that, you know, we would have today, not back then. And then not only were there different automobiles to rewind. Features on automobiles are also being added and upgraded as well. Before, like I said, you know, sole purpose was to get from point A to point B. There wasn't any luxury packages, no cold weather packages, no special features to them at all. You know, you had a steering wheel, and a gas pedal and a brake pedal. You just went there, that's it. Went to where you were trying to go, and that's it. So when automobiles were first invented, there wasn't even a radio. The radio wasn't even added until 1924. So not too far, you know, after that was it invented. But even GPS, something that we may, you know, think, oh, I don't even know how I would, you know, live without a GPS, not knowing how to get somewhere. I couldn't possibly use a map. You know, that wasn't even introduced until 1995. And that wasn't something that was standard. It was a little handheld GPS. It wasn't in your car. You had to go out and buy one, you know, stick it on your dash, and, you know, that was your GPS. So even the most basic of automobiles have some sort of specialty feature now. We may not think that, you know, power windows are a specialty feature, or power seats are a specialty feature, or even AC or heaters. Heat is a specialty feature, but it is. You know, being a sales consultant at a car dealership, I've even sold a 2017 this year that had crank windows. So, yeah, definitely crazy. Yeah. But for the most part, you know, many cars these days at least have some sort of specialty feature on them. And, you know, some examples of that would be even, you know, AC seats, heated seats, parking assist, which would be super helpful if you're trying to parallel park and you're not good at it. You have even adjustable suspension on some cars, like Jeeps, that will actually push a button, and while you're inside, the Jeep raises up. Pretty cool. You even have your remote start, so when it's cold outside or even hot outside, you can automatically start to get it hot or warm for you. I mean, so many different things. Rear view camera, you know, some things that we would think that I don't know how I lived without this before, you know, is kind of like what we have now. And you can kind of see in this image here that's, you know, kind of gives an example of that. And again, you know, just every year and every make and model is just different. We've begun to upgrade and update every year than from, you know, previous years in the past. So with that being said, what could the future even hold for us? As far as cars, I mean, it seems like, you know, maybe we've kind of reached our peak, or somehow we have to. You know, something that I think we've all kind of heard about are self-driving cars, which is, they're already hitting the roads, which is kind of crazy. There are many automakers working on this, such as Tesla, Volvo, you know, but even Google and Uber have even gotten their hands on technology such as this. So Google has been testing self-driven automobiles on streets before, but Uber has recently actually opened up a fake city. It's called Uber's Fake City, and it's in Pittsburgh. And it's cool because they have, and you can tell they're mostly Volvo cars, and it's this fake city, and they have, self-driven cars, and they have obstacles that will pop up out of nowhere, and you can see the cars just stop. So what they're doing with that is actually testing out vehicles before they start hitting the streets. How long that's going to go on for? I have no idea, but it's definitely something interesting. And you can see in this image here, there's like a little roundabout that you can see the cars going around. So that's pretty cool. What we do know is that this technology is already being tested on railroads. I don't know if anybody knows this, but Otto is a truck making company, semi making company, and they've already tested out a semi with Budweiser in Colorado that they would make a 132-mile trip through Colorado with no driver. So the driver was in the car or in the truck, but at no point did the driver ever actually drive it. So it's definitely becoming more popular as to when it's something that will actually be, out on the streets for good and all that. Who knows? So you can see the picture of the truck right there. And then, so, we know that we have different vehicles that are powered different ways, whether it's electric or, like it's a hybrid, so, runs off of either battery and gas. Some people are even working on doing hydrogen. So it just depends, what can happen. But we already know that they're working on a way to power and fuel automobiles in different ways. And then, according to BBC, although we may think that gas and diesel engines, combustion engines, may be, on its way out, it actually may not be as much as we want it to be. And why I say that is because even though electric vehicles may be the way to go, they don't have the distance that gasoline or diesel engines do. So if a combustible turbocharged rotary engine were to have been created, there might be a way for there to be, less emissions, toxic emissions, but also allow you to go a farther distance. So, and then another alternative that I kind of mentioned before was hydrogen-powered automobiles. This would create, this would drastically cut the toxic emissions quite a bit. So instead of carbon dioxide being emitted from the car, it would be vapor. So it would be a lot less toxic than what we breathe in every day. So, and you can kind of see an example there. But again, like I mentioned before, how much could automobiles really change? I mean, after, self-driven cars, after we, change how they're going to be fueled and powered, what could we possibly change every year to make the car better or the automobile better? In reality, it's really hard to say. I have no idea. Doing research, there isn't really anything out there that says one way or another. But we definitely know that with the works of self-driving automobiles and cleaner emissions, that is definitely something that's on its way in. So something that we can look forward to in the future. You can see 2 images there as an example. So we've talked about how automobiles were in the past, how they were invented, how they are now, and how, what's changed, and how they could be in the future and how we can make it better. So even though we know how far the automobiles traveled, it's still unsure where it's going to continue its journey, or if it will even come to an end. We have no idea. That being said, it's still unsure when we will have flying cars. The answer is probably never, but you know what? We have no idea. So, anyways, I just want to thank you guys for listening to my speech, and yeah, that is it. Thank you.
Well done.